Thank you very much. Welcome along, everybody. Really glad to be here. As mentioned, my name is Steve Holyhead. I'm an experienced editor. I've also been a supervising editor and manager of post-production at organizations such as the BBC and Discovery Communications. I've also worked as a solutions expert for manufacturers such as Autodesk and Avid. And today, through my own company, Bloomcast, I'm a workflow consultant and training instructor for broadcasters, post facilities, and many other different types of media and entertainment companies. I've been a long-time user and fan of Boris effects, and I continue to enjoy using their products in all aspects of my work today. As such, I'm delighted to be here. And I'm double delighted to be here because today we get to show you BCC 8.2. And the big news about BCC 8.2 is that if we take a look in the effects palette in the top left-hand corner of my GUI right now, you're going to see that many of the effects that you traditionally associate with Boris Continuum Complete now have this little green dot next to them. And so for Avid users, you will know that that means that these effects are in fact going to be delivered now in real time. So when you create these beautiful effects using BCC, you're going to be finding that a whole slew of these effects are now going to be delivered in real time on your timeline. So that's the big news for BCC 8.2. Now, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Boris Continuum Complete, let me tell you that it's a comprehensive set of over 200 visual effects filters neatly arranged into these 16 distinct categories. BCC is often referred to as the Swiss Army knife of VFX for editors and compositors, and that's because it includes so many wonderful algorithms, state-of-the-art algorithms for speed and accuracy. But the effects themselves are extremely simple to use, but very deep if you want to customize them. The effects also include built-in features such as a motion tracker, a matte and masking system, built-in motion blurs in the appropriate effects, and of course the ability to save out a static or animated state of any filter that you're working on as a custom preset. In addition, the filter set comes with over 2,000 factory installed presets. So if you want to sort of browse around and get a sense of what different effects can do, you can use the presets and then customize from there. Today, we are going to be focusing on 3 separate tasks or chores, depending on how you see it, that today's editors are going to run into from time to time, and more often than not in most of these cases. The first one we're going to look at is an example of pan and zoom. Pan and zoom basically gives me the ability to reference an image that is much larger than the raster in use in my timeline and move around and zoom into that data set. In this case, I'm going to be using a map, but it could be any kind of data that you want to explore visually with your audience. So we'll be looking at pan and zoom and looking at some interesting tips and tricks in using that particular effect. Next, we'll be looking at applying a beauty pass with today's emphasis on HD, 2K, 4K cameras, having some mechanism or strategy in post for really protecting how our on-screen talent looks in the final deliverable is extremely important. So I'm going to be showing you some cool techniques for getting the most and the best out of your talent's skin tones. And then finally, we're going to move on and we're just going to look at some of the really powerful and beautiful effects that we can create using BCC 8.2, using this high quality, pristine material that I've got ready to go in this particular sequence. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Before we dive in, just let me tell you that usually when I do a Boris Effects seminar or webinar, I'm using Media Composer on Mac Today, I just thought I'd switch it up a little bit. So I'm actually using Symphony 652 on PC with a Nitrous DX attached. That doesn't make any difference to my presentation. I just wanted to let the geeks out there know what we're running on, okay? Oh, and one other thing. As I move through the presentation today, I want you to realize that I'm going to use a couple of different layouts for my Symphony Nitrous system. This layout is source record mode. The other layout that I'm going to be using is effects mode. So if you see the interface shift like this, it's just because I'm using keyboard shortcuts to get to the most appropriate screen layout for the task that I'm currently on. Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to start on pan and zoom. And as you can see here in my timeline, I've got 4 different segments of material, video material, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And I'm actually going to be applying the pan and zoom across all 4 of these segments in my timeline. So to speed things up, I'm actually going to multi-select, so shift select, all 4 segments in my timeline. Now I'm going to go to the effects palette, and I'm going to go to the perspective category. Under the perspective category, I'm going to find BCC pan and zoom. And if I double click on that with all 4 clips selected in my timeline, that effect will then get applied to all 4 clips in one go. Okay, so that done, I want to point out that I'm now going to go into effects mode. So the screen's going to change, and I'm going to highlight on the first effect in my sequence. And I'm going to be showing you 3 different workflow modes today using the BCC pan and zoom effect. Okay, so the first mode that we're going to be looking at is what's called AB auto animation, or BA auto animation, and this is a fully automatic mode. You do not need to know how to use keyframes to get a beautiful result out of using auto animation. So I'm going to show you that first. Then I'm going to show you AB completion mode, which is semi-manual or semi-automatic, depending on how you think of that. And then finally, I'll finish up using transform A, which is a fully manual mode to create my pan and zoom effect. So we're going to start on AB auto animation. And you'll notice that initially, when I first apply the effect, a lot of effects in the BCC range actually give us a default auto animation. And they do that to simply give us an idea of the type of effect that we're creating and what some of the parameters are that we might want to look at adjusting. And in this particular case, you can see that the pan and zoom effect has automatically applied just a generic zoom into the center of the image area here. And it's showing us something really important. If you look in the area that's meant to be the ocean here, this kind of black-gray area, you should see at home there all sorts of pixelization going on in the image. And the same is true on the edge detail in the map area here too. And of course, the reason for that is that my image that I imported in as a reference, these black and white images are simply a reference that I put in my timeline to hold the place for when I load in my high-res image. Well, they're only 1920 by 1080, so 1920 20 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high. And when I zoom in, you're obviously getting less and less of the picture area, so the pixels essentially blow up. And so we get this rather rough looking result. And of course, that is the entire idea behind pan and zoom. Because in pan and zoom, what I'm going to do is not actually look and work on the host layer. I could do, but to get the most out of pan and zoom, I really need to go to external file. External file. So here underneath external file, I can now load in an external file either from a watch folder. So if I'm working in a collaborative team and the element is still being worked on by somebody else in my facility, well, I can just link to it in a watch folder. Or in this case, I know exactly where my file is and I'm going to load it in. It's called Earth Day and it's 4096 pixels wide by 2048 high. So it's a 4K plate essentially. When I go ahead and load that in, Now what you're going to see is the actual image that I want to be using rather than the reference image that was in my timeline. And so this is the full goodness of that 4K plate. And if I zoom in now using the auto animation, look at the difference. You can see already that we're not getting that pixelation, and we have plenty of detail around the fine edges in my map here. So obviously I'm not going to stick with that example animation there. I've got my own animation I want to do, but I just wanted to show you the difference straight away when we're using a high-res plate. And then of course the algorithms in the BCC pan and zoom effect are also helping with the smoothing and sharpening algorithms that are embedded there. Now, under my source controls, I've got video safe colors, so I can make sure that any changes that I make are going to be safe for broadcast. I've also got the ability to dial in specific aspect ratios. In this case, I'm dealing with square pixels, so this is perfect the way it is. And I've also got the ability to alter the aspect ratio manually with my slider here if I have an image which has maybe an odd aspect ratio or something like that. So with that done, really the next thing that I want to turn my attention to is make sure that I am indeed in AB auto animation, so I'm in the correct workflow mode. And the next thing I want to do is switch on my preview mode underneath the animation drop down here. When I switch on the preview mode, I now get the ability to work on setup A, which is the beginning of my effect, work on setup B, which is the end of my effect, or look at the mix, which is going to show me the animation between A and B. So let's switch back to A right now. And you can see here under the transform controls, I've got the ability to change the position and the scale of my initial setup point using sliders here. But honestly, you know, it's my preference to use the on-screen controls. I just find that easier and faster for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition over North America here. And what I'm looking to do is essentially just get the whole continent in. So as I watch and move over here, look up in the top right hand corner and you're going to see the result of what I'm doing over here displayed up here in the top right hand corner. So you know, if I scale up just a little bit more now, I'm probably going to get the whole continent of North America in, and that's looking pretty good. So already I'm halfway towards creating my animation. I've set up position A. Now what I can do under preview mode again is choose setup B, which is where I want to animate to. In this case, what I'd like to do is actually go ahead and move this over Australia. And I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit as well. And just a little tip here, if you're trying to zoom into a very small point on the map, it might be useful to use your zoom in and zoom out buttons here in the Avid interface, just so that these adjustments are actually going to be more precise. I can see that I'm getting Tasmania in there, and I obviously don't want to miss out Tasmania because they might get rather upset. So, so now we've created our B point, we've got our A point and our B point. If I go now to target mix, now you can see what we've set up. Again, using no keyframes, right? I haven't had to add any keyframes manually, but just using target A and target B, I can see now the animation that I've set up that includes rotation, scaling, and repositioning. So, so that's a good start to my effect. I like that. And if I go ahead now and turn off preview mode, you'll see what it's actually going to look like in the final result. So we're gonna start off nice and slow, move across Africa, and then eventually end up in Australia like so. Now there's a couple of things that I want to adjust here before I go much further. The first one is that under the animation category here in the pan and zoom effect, I've got the ability to display my ease curve. And what that means is I've got these 4 basic controls. I can choose to hold for 15 frames at the beginning, maybe hold for 15 frames at the end. You can see now I've got this little hold at the beginning and the end. And then I might also want to go ahead and accentuate the ease in and the ease out here, so that I get a more gradual sort of lift off and landing for my pan and zoom effect. So now if I switch off the ease curve and I start playback, and I'm going to use the play preview button in Symphony here, not the play button. The play preview button allows me to make sure I play every single frame of the effect. So when I'm analyzing something, it's usually the best button to use. So you can see I get a really nice lift off now after my hold. And then if I skip forward a little bit, you'll see that the landing is super nice and soft as well. And that's what we really need when we're doing a pan and zoom effect like this. Otherwise we're gonna jar the viewer out of being immersed in that experience. So I've already kind of tweaked the animation slightly there. The other thing that I'd like to do, hopefully you can see this at home too over your web connection or in the office, but now that I've zoomed in all this way into Australia, I am getting a little bit of blurring on the image itself. It's not quite as crystal clear as it could be. So what's nice here is under quality, under the quality drop down at the bottom of the effect, I can go ahead and increase the sharpness. So I want you to carefully study what happens in the detail area here in the middle of Australia as I increase the sharpness and pull, look at that, pulling all those details back out of that zoomed in portion of the raster there. And this is courtesy again of those algorithms which are built in to the BCC pan and zoom. So now what we're getting is really much closer to the final result that we want. I've got my beautiful slow start, slow end. I've got a smooth animation, and I've got crystal clear detail all the way down at the lowest level of my zoom. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to choose to save this preset. So I'm going to go to the very top of the effect. I'm going to say save, and I'm going to call this map effect 101. Okay, that's going to be the name of my preset there, map effect 101. And the reason I did that is that now I've got an animation on my first segment of the timeline. I'm going to move seamlessly to the second segment of my timeline. Why am I seeing the black and white image? Well, I'm still seeing the reference video that I loaded in order to create my template timeline here. So this is the video image that's just my placeholder. So what I'm going to do this time though is simply go back to the preset menu and say load. And I'm going to load my map effect 101 right there, open. So I've loaded the metadata, all of the positioning, rotation, quality, scaling and aspect ratio information. I've loaded all of that, but the pan and zoom effect, BCC pan and zoom is saying, okay, that's great. Did you want to use, which particular image did you want to use? Obviously, if I wanted to use the same image again, I would have copied the whole stack over. But in this case, I want to load a different file. So I'm going to go back to external files, and I'm going to load Earth Night. It's 3600 wide by 1800 high. So it's a different size to Earth Day. But watch this, this is really cool. Because Earth Day and Earth Night both are derived from the same mapping data, and they have the same aspect ratio, they are in fact exactly the same now when I rerun the effect through. There's no difference between the scaling and the positioning, even though the original files are different physical sizes. So what can I do with this? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I've loaded the same preset with a different file, and now I'm going to get a little bit cheeky and go into workflow, AB auto animation, and I'm going to flip it around and make it BA auto animation. So instead of starting in North America and ending in Australia, if I just go out of effects mode for a second here, you can see that now my sequence is starting in North America during the day, arriving in Australia during the day, transitioning frame accurately to Australia at night, and then taking the red eye back to North America like so, and landing exactly the same position. this is pretty cool. And it means that I could do interesting effects. For example, I might go ahead and add a little 15 frame dissolve now. And so as I transition now, Australia goes from day to night, like so, and then begins its journey back to North America. So pretty cool what you can do simply taking an A-B auto animation, applying it to the next clip and reversing it, and then doing a transition between them. Pretty cool, pretty cool. So we're already starting to build a reasonable sequence here in our timeline. I'm going to go to the third segment, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to go back into effects mode. I'm going to load in the same preset, so map effect 101. And again, I'm going to load in my external file. I'm going to swap back to daytime. And again, I'm going to add a dissolve between night and day this time. So I go from North America at nighttime. I'm going to step through, arrive at daytime. And at the moment, the animation is still going back to Australia, and that's not what I want at this point. So I want to change that. How do I change that? Well, it's really easy. All I'm going to do is step into preview mode again. I'm going to make sure that I'm selected on target setup B. And I think this case, what I'd like to do is maybe go from North America to the Middle East, right about here, right? And maybe I'll do a little bit of a scale adjustment there, and maybe a little bit of a rotation adjustment. But essentially, that's where I want to fly to, just having a look at the Middle East and maybe the eastern portion of North Africa there. Now, I've done that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip workflow modes. Instead of leaving myself in A-B auto animation, I'm going to now switch to A-B completion mode. And A-B completion mode, as I said, unlike A-B auto animation, which is fully automatic, this is semi-automatic or semi-manual. And what I mean by that is that now, if I turn off my preview mode, so we can see actually the output of the effect, that at the moment, as I scrub through now, nothing is happening. Even though I have an A position and a B position, nothing is happening because the system is saying to me, well, hey, if you're in A-B completion mode, Steve, I need you to add a couple of keyframes simply to determine how fast the completion takes place. So in this case, I could add a keyframe here just after the dissolve. So I've held myself in position for the day to, from the night to day transition. And then towards the end of the effect, I'm going to add another keyframe. And then all I need to do is crank up the completion. So as you can see, you could do multiple passes back and forth just using the completion slider itself. I'm also going to change that to a spline. So I get a smoother landing and a smoother takeoff. And you can see now how quickly it is that I can animate, make changes to an existing effect and or change modes to A-B completion mode, which gives me more possibilities in terms of the keyframing that I can do. Okay, so we have very rapidly been able to set up a whole series of animated moves here, which are also all interlocking. And so this is just a wonderful tool if you want to get in and start creating this type of work, but maybe you either don't have time or you don't have the inclination to be dealing with a lot of keyframes. That said, of course, I can still use this in a fully manual mode as well. Here we are back at the very beginning of our effect again on the fourth segment. This time, I'm going to start off completely from scratch. I'm not going to use a preset. I'm going to go ahead and load in an external file. This time, I'm going to load in a 6.5K plate, 6,500 pixels wide by about 4,000 pixels high. So a really big image this time. And you can see it's a different style of map. It's a different aspect ratio. But courtesy of that 6K plate, I'm going to really be able to zoom in and get a lot of goodness out of this particular image. So in this case, as I said, I'm not going to use AB, auto animation. I'm not going to use AB completion. I'm going to use transform A. I still will want to use the preview mode because that's what's going to give me my on-screen controls. But now what I want to do is basically create a keyframe right here within my effect. And before I do anything else, actually, I'm just going to turn off preview mode, go to quality mode, and actually add the sharpness right off the bat so that it's going to be there underneath everything that I do. Okay, now I'm going to go back to preview mode, and I'm going to start by zooming in. And I'm going to create a transition this time starting up in Alaska, right up here. And now I'm going to play through a few frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Add another keyframe to hold the position, and then move through to the next waypoint, if you like, where I'd like to sort of pause for a change. I'm going to add a new keyframe there, reposition, this time maybe over Central America here. Okay. Again, play through a few frames. Again, add another keyframe to hold. Animate through. Maybe I'll make it a longer portion this time before I add a new keyframe, because I'm actually going to change directions and go across to North Africa here and rescale a little bit along the way. Again, I'm going to hold it for a few frames. Find a new waypoint marker, add a keyframe there, move up to Europe this time, like so. Hold it for a few frames. And then maybe I'll finish up by zooming into this little island off the coast of France here. There we go, strange looking little island there. And so I can get into a really high degree of detail here. And you can see that if I now go ahead and switch off the preview mode, even when I'm zoomed all the way into a tiny little island like this one, I can still see all of the detail that I want out of my image. So using this technique, as you can see, I can either use AB auto animation mode, I can use AB completion mode, or I can use a fully manual transform A mode to create some really fantastic effects. And you know, there's even a cadence filter built in under the quality menu. So if you get any kind of flickering or anything, which is as a result of the speed and size of your clip, you can always come back into the effect here, go right down to the bottom, and under quality there's a reduce flicker drop down, which allows you to use various cadence filters to get rid of any kind of aberrations, which, as I say, might come from an interaction of the math between the size of your image and the speed that you're moving at. Okay, so hopefully there you've seen some new tips and tricks. Even if you're familiar with the pan and zoom effect, you've seen some new tips and tricks, and you can see that the pan and zoom effects are now green dot effects, which means that you'll be able to preview and maybe even play back and deliver those results in real time. So that's great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch gears slightly and move on to our beauty pass. Here I've got three lovely ladies, and courtesy of our fantastic high-res cameras, what we're going to see on our ladies is every single detail of their skin. Every pore, every skin tag, every beauty mark, every blood vessel, everything's going to be present on the skin there. And obviously, we want to use these beautiful cameras to get as much data as possible, but the human eye would not see these things. If I was having a conversation with this lady, I wouldn't be looking at her skin in microscopic detail. I'd be looking in her eyes, and we'd be having a conversation, and any details about skin tones would probably be dropped from any information my brain was processing. However, the camera doesn't have that luxury. It can't ignore the data, and so it thrusts all of this information directly into the viewer's face, so to speak. So what we want to do is we want to use a special blend of BCC effects to do a beauty pass. Now, we're going to set up on the first lady, excuse me, and then we're going to apply across our other on-screen talent here. So to do that, I'm actually going to first of all start off by going into effects mode, and I'm going to go to the image restoration category. And under image restoration is an effect called smooth tone. I'm going to take the smooth tone effect, drag it and drop it onto my clip. And the thing about smooth tone that you should know is that it's designed to preserve edges whilst smoothing out textures such as the skin, for example. So the eyes and the lashes and the hair is going to remain unaffected because it has edge information, but it's the skin here, the skin tones, that are really going to get the bulk of the love from the smooth tone effect. So let's start to then use the smooth tone effect. What are the things that I'm going to adjust in smooth tone to start to actually give me a reduction in the texture here on the skin areas? So, well, what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to change my method from fastest or faster to smoother, which is going to give me a range more control over the image. And what I want you to do is watch what happens on the cheekbones now as I take the radius slider and I start to increase the radius of the smooth tone effect. You should have seen by this point that there is already a reduction in the amount of detail that we can see across those texture areas on the cheeks. I'm also going to go ahead and increase the iterations up to 2. That's going to even further seek to blend away any artifacts that we don't want. Now, I've got a compare mode up here. I can either choose a basic compare, which is going to give me a line. So hopefully now, if I leave this in situ for a second, even if you're on a relatively slow internet connection, you should be able to see smoothing on this side of the image and no smoothing on this side of the image. Alternatively, I could use a side-by-side comparison mode, and using the wipe slide and right offset sliders, I can reposition the information on the left and right hand sides here and move around and make sure that I actually am getting to see all of the pixels that I need to see in order to make the decisions that I need to make whilst I'm affecting the output here. Okay, now I'm going to turn off the comparison for a second, and I want to discuss something that happens when you apply smooth tone. As I said, smooth tone is designed to preserve edge information, but one of the things that we might want to do at certain times is use a holdout mask to maybe protect certain parts of the image from having the smooth tone applied. Let's say, for example, we had a background here that had a whole bunch of intricate imagery instead of just a white background. We wouldn't want the smooth tone applied there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a technique which is to use the pixel chooser to create a matte, and it's going to help us hold out. In this case, since there isn't anything in the background, I'm not going to use that as my example. What I'm actually going to use as my example are the eyes, the kind of the edge of the nose, and maybe a bit of the lips here. But as I say, that edge is normally preserved, so I'm really kind of doing this as more of an example to show you the pixel chooser. So down here at the bottom, here's the pixel chooser. I'm going to go ahead and switch it on. And now I'm going to go back into the same menu and I'm going to say view chosen pixels. And hey presto, there are no chosen pixels right at this particular moment in time. Why? Well, we haven't actually put any data into the pixel chooser, which is going to create our matte or our mask for us. So first thing I'm going to do is, because I really want to isolate myself, isolate the skin region, I'm actually going to go into the channels. I'm going to use the red channel and I'm going to switch from threshold to levels. And now, as you can probably guess, what I'm going to do is use the black threshold and the white threshold to get myself to a point where I'm really isolating the areas that I want to hold out. And in this case, like I say, I'm going to use the eyes and the hair as my example, but ordinarily I'd probably do this for the background. And so I can go in, I can, add a little bit of blur to the matte if that helps. I can tweak these settings until I get a nice solid black area to deal with and a nice solid white area to deal with, and that's going to really give me the best result in terms of holding out this effect from areas of the image that I don't want affected. So if I now go back to Pixel Chooser, and instead of saying View Chosen Pixels, I just switch it back on, what this is going to have done for me is really isolate any areas that I don't want affected. So if I went back into compare mode now, and I did side by side, and I zoomed in, you can see that though there's a radical difference already in the smoothness of the skin textures, we still have plenty of clarity in the edges and also the detail now within the eye and the hair on the eyelashes. So smooth tone really helping us to take off here and start applying our beauty pass. So that's ingredient number 1. Ingredient number 2 is going to be the film glow. Now, before I go on to the film glow, though, what I want to do is I'm actually going to save out the preset, both for the effect and my Pixel Chooser mask, because I'm going to use these over and over again. So here under Pixel Chooser, what I can do is I can say save, and I'm going to call this Beauty Pass 101, okay? And I'm going to save, and that's going to be my, I'm going to put a PC on the end of there for Pixel Chooser. And I'm also going to save out the entire effect as well. So what's the difference? Well, let me just type this in, 101, there we go. The difference is that saving out the preset for the Pixel Chooser means that I could load that Pixel Chooser or that matte selection into a different BCC effect. When I save out the entire effect, I could apply this to a different clip and get a very similar result, maybe a little bit of tweaking required, but not much. So that's why I've saved out both of those. And now, as I said, I'm going to move on to my second ingredient, which is going to be the film glow. So back up here in the top left-hand corner of Symphony, I'm in the BCC film style category. I'm going to go and grab the BCC film glow, and on a PC I hold down Alt, on a Mac I hold down Option, and I drag and I auto nest that effect over the top of the smooth tone. So you can see now there's the smooth tone below the film glow. Okay, so I'm starting to stack my effects one on top of the other. Now, obviously, this particular film glow is maybe a little bit extreme. It's the default parameter. So what I'm going to do is initially come down here to the film glow, and I'm going to take the glow intensity, which is defaulting to about 60, and I'm just going to halve that. And that's going to get me some way towards where I want to be. Next thing, I'm going to drag the glow threshold slider upwards. And what that's going to do is that's going to take more and more of the image data out of the effect input and leave me with quite a subtle result. If you now look at what I've generated, in fact, the best way for me to show you this is for me to just go to the bypass button here at the top, near the top of Film Glow, click bypass. Now we see that we've created a very subtle effect. When I switch it back on though, look how much it transforms. It really starts to make our original photography look quite flat when I take the bypass off. Boom. now we're adding all sorts of vibrancy to this particular image. We're really allowing, you know, some subtle differentiations in shading and color to come forward, but it's really a very subtle effect, and it's sort of breathing a little bit more life and a little bit more sort of vibrancy into our image there. And again, if I was concerned about holding out any data, let's say I didn't want the film glow to apply to her eyes, or other areas of the image, what could I do? Aha! I could go to my pixel chooser, I could switch it on. Just so that you can see what I'm doing, I'm also going to view chosen pixels. And now I'm going to go and load that Beauty Pass 101 pixel chooser matte that I created earlier. And hey presto, it is as simple as that to create a holdout now for the glow on the eyes and the hair and the edge of the lips and stuff like that. So you can see how I can reuse the pixel chooser data in different effects. I used the pixel chooser data from the smooth tone effect and applied it within the film glow effect, like so. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to my third ingredient, but before I do that, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my film glow and I'm going to save this out as Beauty Pass 101. Okay. And so now I've got a setup for my film glow as well. The third section, or the third technique that I'm now going to use, is to add some film grain. So again, on a PC, Alt, on a Mac, Option, drag and re-nest this over the top. Now you can see that I've got smooth tone on the bottom, film glow over the top of that, and now film grain over the top of both of those. Now let me zoom in here because I think you'll be able to see this at home quite clearly. You should see now quite an amount of default grain on the skin, on the hair, and also on the background here. And I'm going to want to remove it from the background in just a second. But the whole point of this is that the film grain, adding film grain at the final stage of an effect, allows you essentially to bind together all of the elements that you've put together in your scene and fool the viewer into feeling like they were all photographed at that one point in time, right? So even though I've applied effects which may have removed some of the video detail from my image in order to get rid of that skin aberrations that we don't want to see, what the film grain is going to do is allow us to kind of mask the fact that we've done manipulations on the image and tie it all back together. So at the moment, if I zoom in here, I can really see kind of, you know, a very exaggerated film grain. And so what I'm going to do initially is go into the red amount here, and I'm just going to drop that down, and you should see immediately we're going to get a much finer result in terms of the grain on the skin and the hair there. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm going to do. The next thing I'm going to do is this time I'm going to create a pixel chooser holdout, but for the white area, for the background area. I don't want to see any of this film grain on this white area out here. Okay, I just want it to be used to bind together what I've been doing on my foreground element. So to do that, what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to go and turn the pixel chooser on. Again, just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to say view chosen pixels. I'm not going to have any pixel data yet, so I'm going to have to go set that up. Because I want to focus on the background, which is white, I'm actually going to use the blue channel, like so. And now you can see that I can again switch through from threshold to levels, and again start to manipulate my black threshold and my white threshold until I get a clean matte. So I'm going to drag my slider up on the black threshold, drag my slider down on the white threshold, getting those closer and closer together. Again, I could do some choking if I needed to do on the matte. I could also do a little bit of blurring if I was concerned about any of the edges. And because I want to hold out this area, I'm going to go ahead and actually invert the matte like so. All right. So now when I go back to the pixel chooser and I just switch it back on, in other words, don't show pixels, but instead show the final result, and I zoom in here, hopefully you guys can also, I'll zoom all the way in. Hopefully you guys at home can now see that I've got grain here, but I don't have any grain here now, courtesy of using that pixel chooser effect. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to save out this third effect now as a preset. I'm going to call this Beauty Pass 101. Now, if you're confused, if you think I keep on saving the same effect, I'm not. BCC understands the difference between a film grain preset, a smooth tone preset, and other presets. So when I type Beauty Pass, it knows that this is the Beauty Pass preset for the film grain as opposed to the film glow or the smooth tone. So we have really improved our on-screen look here, and I want to show you how quickly it is, that I can now version that same data onto the neighboring clip here, right? So if even though this is a different person, and generally speaking, when we're doing a beauty pass, it will be, we'll often be cutting back to the same person, right? That's sort of pretty normal. But what I'm showing you here is how I can even take presets that were designated for one person and apply them to the other. I mean, the skin tones, the ranges that we've been picking are going to be very similar in these cases between these two individual on-screen talent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with image restoration. I'm going to add smooth tone like so. I'm going to go into effects mode, and I'm simply going to load the preset. Load, Beauty Pass 101, right? Load that. Now I get my smooth tone applied. Now I'm going to go to the film style, and I'm going to grab the film glow, Alt or Option to nest over the top. Go ahead, load the preset. So I'm going to have a Beauty Pass in here, 101. Load my glow preset, and then finally take my film grain, composite that back over the top, and load once again my Beauty Pass preset there. And so now I've gone through the entire process just reusing the work that I did on the first clip in the sequence. Hey, let me show you one other way that I could achieve that same stacking of those effects efficiently. Here at the end of the timeline, I have another lady altogether against the black background in this particular case. And another way that I could transfer all of those effects from the previous clips to this clip will be to do the following. What I'm going to do is I'm going to match frame her back into my source viewer. So I've got her in point there. Then I'm going to step back onto this clip, mark the whole thing. I'm actually going to mark just the video in this case. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy just this clip, and I'm going to paste it over the top of this clip, like so. So you might say, well, that doesn't seem very logical to me, Steve. Well, you'll see the method in my madness any second now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use these arrow buttons in the bottom left-hand corner of my Avid timeline, and I'm going to step in, step in, step in, until I step beneath all the layers of effects that we've created. Now I'm going to simply highlight this clip, replace it with this one, boom, and now when I step back up, we'll see, first of all, smooth tone, then we'll see film glow, then we'll see film grain. So two different ways for you to use presets in generated out of Boris Continuum Complete 8.2 to quickly get through doing a beauty pass on your on-screen talent. So now The next and final result today, before we move on to the end of the presentation and we do the drawing for the free software, is we're going to have a quick look now at just a couple of custom transitions. I've got these clips here in my timeline, and I just want to share with you how much I use these transition effects. You know, a dissolve's a dissolve's, a cut's a cut. When I want to do something a little bit more special, when I want to add maybe a little bit of mystery or a little bit of panache or a bit of slickness to the piece that I'm using, I'm going to come and I'm going to go to my BCC tools. I'm going to go to BCC transitions, and I'm going to use some of this goodness in here. All of these real time now, by the way, in BCC 8.2. The first example today I'm going to use is the swish pan. So let me take that, and by the way, almost every Boris effect can be either dragged as and dropped as a segment-based effect, like so, or dragged and dropped in the transition point between two clips to create a transition. So here you can see, if I use the play preview button again, we're going to get the blur pan. It melds the two, the swish pan. It melds the two images together and produces a beautiful result. That said, I want to show you how quickly I could go in and just change a couple of characteristics of this effect to make it more pleasing for me in this particular case. First of all, I want to show you that we have an ease curve, just like we did with the pan and zoom effect. So I can go ahead and, you know, do a more subtle transition in and a more subtle transition out, and you can even see the picture data updating behind what I do here. So that's going to give me a slightly different attack on my effect, and I'm still seeing a fairly decent edge between these two, and I think it's probably could lend itself to a more vertical style transition. So I'm actually going to change the direction from left to top to bottom, like so, and I like that, but I'm getting a really distinct edge now between one image and the other. So to offset that a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into here, my blur extras. And this is what I love about using BCC. There's always extra filters, extra parameters that I can go into really customize the effect. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the clip motion blur and also the effect motion blur. And now what you're going to see is that as I play the effect back, I'll play back slowly so you can see it. As I play the effect back, essentially the images really kind of break down and then rebuild themselves in this really elegant way. And so before the viewer knows where they are, they've experienced a kind of a beautiful transition, and now they've arrived in a new landscape. And so I use the swish pan a lot. It's used in news, it's used in reality TV, documentaries, sports programming. It's a really versatile effect. Depending on whether you use it fast or slow, it can communicate all sorts of different sort of emotions and feelings to the viewer. The next effect that I want to show you real fast is the lens transition. This is great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop this on to the transition point between these two clips. And what we're playing with here is a concept known as bokeh or bokeh. And that is basically the amount of haze or blur that's naturally occurring within different lens systems. So it's a Japanese term. I apologize if I haven't pronounced it properly, but it's a Japanese term that many DPs use to sort of describe the characteristics of a particular lens that they might want to use to shoot a particular scene. And so we're going to play with those characteristics a little bit here. As you can see, I'm going to park myself in the middle of the effect here so we can really see what's going on. And I'm going to take the iris scale here, and I'm going to increase the iris scale up like so. And so that's adding to the sort of blurriness of the effect itself. And in fact, I've gotten to such a scale now, it's hard for me to see the individual sort of lens artifacting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gamma slider and I'm going to ramp that up, and by adding extra gamma, I'm now going to start to see the edges of those lens artifacts starting to stand out again. So that's pretty cool. And you can see here that I've got the ability to view my iris, so I can change between various different iris sizes and shapes. Of course, I don't need to be viewing the iris. I mean, if I changed now, for example, to 3-sided, I'd see that result on screen at that particular moment. I'm actually going to go and switch to circle, and I'm going to get these beautiful big puffy blobs that sort of indicate the, you know, that in-camera, in-lens effect there. And so basically now, when I play this effect back, I mean, it's just gorgeous. I mean, I get really a transition that in and of itself is a beautiful thing. Before I know where I am, I'm in a new landscape. I can't really quite tell how I got there, but it was very seamless, and once again, a very beautiful transition. Two more quick examples for you. I've got a multi-stripe wipe that I'm going to apply here. Multi-stripe wipe I'm going to apply to this transition point. And in this case, I'm just going to use the next preset button to cycle through some of the presets that we've got available to us here. And you can see how quickly you can preview these effects and maybe find one that is to your liking, maybe at least a good starting point. I like this one here, randomized soft blend. I'm going to just very minutely increase the line count, and because I've got these this nice big open area for the lake and the sky here, I think I'm going to take the direction of the effect and actually make it horizontal instead. And now look at this. This is just great. When I click the playthrough button now, look at this effect. I mean, isn't that gorgeous? And how fast was that for me to create? Really something head and shoulders above a dissolve, really adding some finishing touches to my piece. And then the final one, I've got a textured wipe. I love using the textured wipe, so I'm just going to show you quickly how I'm going to use this effect. This is great as well. Look, the sun's going to break through on the sky here, and then I'm actually going to get a silhouette of the city, but actually using the foreground landscape here, the grass and the rocks and what have you. And really the only alteration I'd want to do to this particular effect will be to go over and adjust the softness slightly, maybe also affect the influence softness, add a little bit of blur, and now watch as we transition through. We get it breaking through the sky there. The sky transitions first, then the landscape, and then finally the city fills into the foreground there. So hopefully today we've seen some fun stuff. Like I say, we've seen the pan and zoom effect. That we were able to create a whole series of iterative moves. We've also seen our beauty pass, which allowed us to take our on-screen talent and really get the best out of them. And then finally, we saw our transitions and how we can work very quickly to create some beautiful custom transitions using BCC 8.2. So with that, I'd just like to leave you all. Thank you very much for your time. Stick around for the drawing. I really hope that I've been able to pass some useful information along today. It's been a real pleasure to be here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.